Welcome, everyone, to this week's conversation. I'm so excited for you to hear from the co-founder and president of Samaritan Aviation, which is an organization who provides seaplane assistance to remote villagers in Papua New Guinea. But he's going to take us all the way back to when he was a 16-year-old called to be a pilot in these remote and desolate areas to bring assistance, disaster relief, and medical help to those who don't have it via road. So he's going to tell his story from being 16 and called and 19 when he would visit a country that he didn't know at the time would become his home, Papua New Guinea. Enjoy my conversation with Mark Palm and the incredible stories, faith, and hope he has to deliver, not only to the place he loves, Papua New Guinea, but to us here listening to him. Enjoy Mark Palm. Thank you for doing this. So you know my parents.
Yeah, so I was thinking that was your dad reached out to me.
Yes.
And we had some great experiences in Papua New Guinea together. So
I am so excited to hear about them. So now, how did you meet my dad? Have you met my mom too, or just my dad?
Yeah, Connie's your mom, right?
Connie, yep. I probably sound a bit like her.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
So I was over in Papua New Guinea, running Samaritan Aviation and doing all the flying, and then YWAM ships came in for 6 months to and worked along the river that we work on the Sepik River. So they're on the ship, and so I did a lot of flights for them out to the boat, back from the boat, bringing in patients to the boat for eye surgeries and picking up patients that were critical to flying back to the hospital and where we live. So yeah, we hung out many times. Your mom and dad were always a joy, at their age, doing what they're doing, and just the passion they had for life and for service. I mean, that's contagious. And I love being around people like that.
And so tell me about a little bit your childhood, and then I want to get into your wife, your kids, and then eventually the call to Papua New Guinea. But how did you grow up? What kind of led you in this direction? Did you always want to be a pilot?
Yeah. So my childhood, I was one of 5 boys. My father was a minister. And so he started churches in different parts of mostly California, Arizona areas. And so I grew up in that, being in church, rain or shine, sick or in health or whatever. It was, It was 3 or 4 times a week, it seemed like growing up. And so that was my initial background, moving around a lot, which I think actually kind of prepared me for a lot of my life that I've had.
What's to come,
getting used to leaving and, starting over in different places. But, being a minister's kid, living in the glass house, as they say, that was kind of my upbringing. My grandfather was a pilot in World War II.
Oh, wow.
My uncle was a pilot. I actually had another uncle that died in a airplane crash. My cousin was a military pilot. So I kind of grew up with this pilot family lineage a little bit.
Wow.
And a ministry lineage.
Yeah,
and so, growing up and seeing, in early days, a lot of obviously sitting in sermons and my dad sharing the word. And but when I was 13, we moved to Santa Cruz, California, and my dad started running a homeless mission there, Elm Street Mission. And so it was during that time.
What was the name of it? Elm Street?
Yeah, Elm Street Mission.
Elm Street Mission. Okay.
And it's still going today, but it was, it was amazing to go in and not just tell people about Jesus, but actually do something tangible and give them a coat. When it gets, even in California, of the Bay Area, it gets cold, and just feeding them and loving on them, and then sharing the gospel message of hope. And so as a teenager, that really had a huge impact on my life and kind of where God has led me. And then when I was 16, I had a chance to go to Mexico with my church youth group to build houses. And, it was the first time I'd seen a different culture and seeing how a lot of the rest of the world actually lives, and the challenges that they have, and being able to go in and once again build a house for someone. It's interesting. I've thought about that trip a lot over my life, and because I've talked to a lot of people about short-term missions and the value and some of the pitfalls. And I look back at that, and honestly, they didn't do a very good job, our church as a short-term mission.
Yeah.
Kind of bringing the outsiders in. We call them expats in New Guinea, but kind of pushing away the local leaders. And so, looking back, I go, wow, that wasn't done right. But, despite that, God really used that trip to reach me. And I was doing a devotional each morning in Psalm 139. And I was one morning I was on this old abandoned well reading Psalm 139, and God just spoke to me, and it was like he was sitting right next to me, and it was very clear. And he said, "Mark, I want you to use your passion for ministry and aviation to share my love in a remote part of the world." And
16.
I'm 16.
Oh man!
I leave that.
Wow.
That well, and I go back and we finish the trip, and I go back to home, and it was like, okay, God, what does this mean? What do I need to do? How do I need to prepare? What's the next step? And so that one moment though completely changed my life. And obviously accepting Christ as a 10-year-old was the first life-changing moment for me. But that trip to Mexico and him speaking so clearly to me was just a life-altering moment in time. And so I went back, and that's kind of my childhood. I was a surfer at Santa Cruz, played football in high school, just the normal American life.
California boy. Yep.
Yeah. So that was kind of me, but also this distinct, clear call that I didn't really know what to do with, as far as like, okay, what does that look like? Because he didn't say, I want you to go to Papua New Guinea, or I want you to go to Africa. It was like, I want you to go to a remote part of the world. So I went to college, Bible school back in near West Palm Beach, a small Bible school called Hope Sound Bible College. And it was there that I met another young guy that was passionate about aviation. He also happened to be a surfer, and had grown up in Papua New Guinea.
No way.
And so,
oh wow, is this your co-founder?
So this is a co-founder. Wow. And so that was kind of another big moment in life. Wow. And so we had this trip to go to New Guinea. He hadn't been back since he was a child, really, and he wanted to go back. I wanted to see, obviously, a remote part of the world, which Papua New Guinea is still considered one of the last frontiers. And so this was 1994. We ended up in Papua New Guinea, and that's kind of
just the two of you.
Just the two of us.
Are you married at this point, or is it?
No, okay. Nobody's married at this point. And I was 19, and just going over for a month. And part of the trip was to be involved in some of the churches that his father and grandfather had started. And then part of the trip was, let's just get off the trail,
Yes.
And we went and lived on these islands where there was nothing, and lived in the huts with the people, and just talk to them about life. We didn't really go in with a big agenda other than to say, hey, what is life like?
Yeah.
What do you struggle with? What is your view of God? What have you, and just from that trip and just some of the experiences we had medically, even, it was just like so obvious that God just said, this is where you need to give your life to serve these people. And that's really where the vision and the dream for Samaritan Aviation came. All the water there's rivers, water, and nobody is flying seaplanes. And so that was,
and there's no roads into these villages, correct?
Correct.
The only way in is by boat or now seaplane in your case.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
so you're 19 years old. And how old are you now, if you don't mind me asking?
46 now.
Oh, okay.
Feels like a lifetime ago.
I must, but you're still doing that work.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like I'm just getting started. The big part of the story is how long it took us, to, one of the things people, ask me for advice a lot of times, and everybody seems to have an idea and they want to start an organization, right?
We're all entrepreneurs these days. Yeah. Like, the dream is so easy, right?
yeah, exactly. And so I'm always like, hey, if you can find anyone else doing what God has called you to do, don't start your own organization because it's extremely difficult. And when you add aviation to that mix,
I can't
with all
imagine
the amount of money that you need. And, I've been bald for about 15 years, but I had long hair at the time and I looked, like I was 14, so I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself, but the idea of like, is there anyone else doing it? And we did look around, and there's zero seaplanes in New Guinea. We felt called to be pilots and missionaries. So the idea of just flying routes or doing commercial flying, even in New Guinea, we just didn't feel like that was where God was calling us. And so that created a situation where it was like, well, there's nobody doing it. Everybody we talked to wasn't willing to change their model either. I was like, well, then we've got to create it. God's given us this vision. We've got to be a pioneer. And so that's really where it all began. So I was 19, he was 21, and we came back from New Guinea. I started flying flight lessons literally a month after I got back.
Okay, so you just went right down to like, I'm going to learn to fly.
Yeah, well, at that point, like I knew I needed to be a missionary aviator, right? But I was going to Bible school first. So I didn't have the money, all those things. So I came back and I was like, now I've got to get my license. Right. And so I started pilot training and a month after I got back. So, I mean, by the time you get ready, I mean, it's years and years. So during that time, I met my wife, Kirsten, which was a God thing. And funny
is she
story.
A pilot as well?
She is not. No, she has a master's in education.
Oh, wow. Okay. Great coupling.
And, so what's a funny story for her is we were dating and I finally got my pilot's license. And so I literally, we call it a check ride. I took the check ride. The guy signs my logbook saying, everything's good. And I called my wife, girlfriend at the time, and I said, hey, let's go flying. So she literally drove down. I think the ink was still not dry, on my license. And we took off. And not only did I just fly her around, I tried to scare her. I know it's terrible, but, I'd always heard stories of pilots that never flew with their wives because their wives hated flying or they, so I was like, I got to figure out if this girl can handle it, So I was turning the plane real sharp and doing steep turns and stalls. And anyway, she thought it was great. So that was another confirmation, But,
she loved the flying antics.
It took us, 10 years of telling the story. We had a dream and a vision, and then we had a beautiful logo and business cards. And the worst question anyone would ever ask me was, "What kind of airplanes do you guys have?" Because we didn't have one. And so, our first prayer card. This is another. I look back. I still have the photo, but we stood in front of someone else's airplane. And we took a photo and we laid out our dream and we sent that to 330 people.
Oh, wow.
And, we were expecting this big cash, we incorporated as a nonprofit. And we were like, man, everyone's going to be so excited. And I think we raised $330 on that first mail out. But, rather than being discouraged, I guess just being young and passionate.
There's some great things about being young. Yep.
Yeah. I figured they didn't hear me. They didn't hear the story
loud
well
enough. Yeah. So we just need to do a what do you call it? A flyby. We'll just.
That's right. So I just kept telling the story, and we kept telling the story, and over time we flew to Mexico for a few years with migrant farm workers and supporting missionaries down on the Baja Peninsula. But the goal was always a P&G, and anyway, it was just a God thing. As we went around, told the story, it didn't give up, and it took 10 years to actually finally. I packed the airplane in a 40-foot container, and it was on the boat. My wife and myself and our three little kids, 4, 5, and 7, got on the airplane and landed in New Guinea. And a month later, the plane actually arrived at the capital, Port Moresby, and I flew out, put it together with a bag of tools, and flew it into Wewak, where we live now, which is on the north coast. And that's how it all began. So that's the short version.
So you went out, got the plane, put it together, flew it in to the city where your family now resides.
That's
and
right.
Your kids are just babies. Were they so excited to see Daddy flying in with this plane?
Yeah,
they had to have known the dream, right?
Oh, well, yeah, it's best as they could at that age. You know, we'd drug them around and told the story to a lot of churches,
so many people,
anyone who would listen to us. And so finally the airplane's there, and what a moment though, to think of the 10 years, and just all the people, one of the things too, this is, as a pastor and working in ministry, but the people that have supported us for, so long. Like, I have friends that literally gave monthly for 10 years before we ever got to New Guinea. And I go back and I just go, wow. Like, they believed in the dream. They believed in the call that God had given us for that long. What amazing for me. It's just like, wow, I just love to go back and just say thanks. Even today, some of those people are still supporting us 20 years later. And,
my goodness.
Just the faithful people that God brings around us to affirm us and to partner with us. I think that, to me, probably one of the coolest things of the whole adventure and faith, as we call it, throughout the years. But 2010, we finally arrived in Wewak and began our life-saving operations. So during those 10 years, we would make trips to New Guinea every couple of years. And so part of that was developing relationships with the government and to say, look, this is what we're doing. We want to come alongside of what you guys are doing. The whole point was let's not duplicate, let's not replace, or try to do something, reinvent the wheels. Like, okay, PNG has a health system. How can we work within that to strengthen them?
I love it.
And empower them. So that's really was the goal from the beginning. And the government was very receptive to that message. And so we said, look, we're going to bring this airplane in, we're going to start operations, and we fully expect you to get behind us once we do that. And so that's what happened. And so within 6 months of us being there, we got our first funding check from the government. But I'll be honest with you, you talk about smooth sailing.
Yeah.
We had about $5,000 in the bank. But when the government finally did come through, adventure and faith, that's kind of a theme for our ministry. And I think God allows us to be put on the edge a lot of times to keep us on our knees. And definitely in the early days, he did that. I'll tell you one story though. In the first 2 months,
please tell me all of them. Yes, give me those early day stories. Then we'll get to the other ones too. You're decades at this now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I remember that. It was Good Friday, so you were talking about how do we set that up? What do we do? So there's a medical storehouse in Wewak, which is the town that we live in. So just let me back up and give you a little picture of the area that we work in.
Please do. Yes. I was just about to ask, can you explain Papua New Guinea, where you lived and the places you're going, just to give the people some idea of what you're living in here?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So to give you some perspective, so Papua New Guinea is New Guinea is the second largest island in the world. We'll start there. Half of it is Indonesia, Irian and then half of it is Papua New Guinea, which has about 8 million people. It's won its independence from Australia in 1975, and it's a Commonwealth country, considered a Commonwealth country. So they have their own government and all of that. So consider one of the most remote places in the world. 80% of the population of Papua New Guinea lives in remote bush areas. 20% live in towns. So in this area that we're in, we're on the north coast, about 160 miles from the border of Indonesia, which is the halfway point on the island. And there's where we're working on is a 700-mile river. So the Sepik River, it's 700 miles. There's, in this province, the East Sepik province, there's 600,000 people. 250,000 live along this river. There's only one hospital.
Oh, wow.
And that one hospital for those people is in Wewak, where we live.
That's where you live. Okay. Wow.
So you can imagine 700 miles. We had a T-shirt that used to say, ask us about our 700-mile runway. But we, on the seaplanes, so they have wheels that come out, so they're amphibious. So we land on the runway in Wewak. That's about a mile from the hospital. And then all of our flights are out to the water. And so on the river, there's about 40 aid posts that we work with. And so that's where we drop off medicine. But, I say aid posts, a lot of those are bush houses. They have a health worker, no nurses. There's a few nurses, 0 doctors on the river.
Wow.
And so you've got, the medical store is in Wewak. And so the aid posts put their orders in. And then, so we started delivering medicine to all the aid posts. And that's really how we started getting the word out who we are, because we came to the medical storehouse in those trips previous to arriving there, and we would see medicine just stacked to the ceiling, and we'd be like, how long has this medicine been here? And they would say, oh, it's been here about 6 months, because it's so hard for them to come down the river
out to them.
3 days, right? And then
how many days of a journey is it?
So it's 1 to 3 to 4 days.
Okay. To just get, and how would they get to you if you weren't taking the plane to them? How would they come?
Yes, so they would get on a canoe, come down the river to there's a road. There's 2 roads on the river.
Okay.
So they'd have to get down to one of the roads, and they'd have to wait for a public transport,
Wow. Okay.
bus or whatever to take them in 4 or 5 hours into Wewak. Yeah. So
wow. Okay. Wow.
That was really where the vision came. People just kept telling us stories about patients dying on the way to the hospital, babies dying, moms dying. And so, you get a snake bite and you've got 6 hours, for example. There's just no way to get to the hospital. And so you have this area storehouse. So we started going out and distributing medicine. And the other thing was the medicines before we came were also getting stolen. People would take it, you pass one clinic and they'd take meds before it got to so the very remote communities were totally getting shorted on their medical orders. So one of the things we did was we answered that challenge of, hey, we can pick the medicine up right at the storehouse. We load it in our plane. We fly it directly to the clinic. So you have accountability. All the meds get there. They don't get wet from all the torrential rain. They don't get lost. They don't get stolen. They don't get sold. And there's accountability. And so that was a huge problem that we helped solve in that whole region. And obviously a 45-minute flight versus a 3-day trip.
Oh, that's life saving,
that's
right?
Life-changing, right?
It's like you said with the snake bite, or I would imagine with a bunch of other things that can happen out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the list of things that we do, but I'll tell you a quick story.
Yes, please do.
So it's Good Friday, 2010. I've been there for 2 months. The plane is now working. I've been delivering medicine, and I get a call from this middle Sepik village, and they said, we have a mom here who is unconscious, been in labor for 3 days. Can you help? And of course it's raining. I've never done a medical flight up to this point. I grabbed the nurse.
You've been giving supplies, but you haven't actually
giving supplies.
You haven't picked someone up yet.
I haven't picked someone up, but I've told people in America for 10 years that
that's what you're going to be doing.
We can save lives, and we can go.
Yeah, here you go.
So here we go.
It's game time.
It's game time. I remember.
Of course, it's raining. Of course,
it's raining. I still remember it was yesterday. I'm putting the stretcher in the plane for the first time.
Oh wow!
I'm fueling it. I mean, I'm all shaky, and I get the nurse in the plane.
I'm getting warm just hearing the start of this story.
Yeah, so I get in the plane. We get out, find our way through the clouds and the rain.
So it's you and a nurse.
It's me and a nurse.
Okay.
And I actually had another one of our pilots that was there for the first month as well. So Bruce Johnson was with me. So it was two of us. The nurse. We take off. We land on the river. This river is about 500 feet wide where we're landing.
Okay.
We come up.
Is that big for a plane? It sounds big, but
it's
or is that small for a plane? Yeah.
No, that's a big river. Yeah, I'm just trying to give you perspective. This river's up to 1,000 feet wide in some areas.
Huge. Okay, gotcha.
Color of chocolate, so you can only see about 3 inches below the surface. It rises and falls up to 20 feet within a week.
Oh my god!
So I mean, constant change. What's
the name
swirls.
of the river?
Sepik River, Sepik.
Sepik River. Okay.
Sepik. Yep. And it's kind of world famous for artifacts and things like that.
Wow.
But we land. They bring this lady. I see him carrying this this limp lady, and she's totally unconscious. We put her in the plane. The nurse, we take off back through the rain, get it, land in Wewak, get her in our vehicle, and we take her to the hospital, drop her off. They rush her into emergency surgery. I go home. The next day, my wife and I and our 3 kids come walking into the hospital, and we don't know, live or if they've made it.
Yeah.
So we walk in there into the recovery room, and there's this lady, Antonia is her name, and she's holding this little baby, this little baby boy, and just to see, to see 2 lives that were saved from that one flight, and what an amazing, just a testament for me. I was just like, thank you, God, thank you that I was persistent. Thank you for all the supporters who allowed us to be here.
Yes.
Thank you for calling me. And then, kind of on a side note, they asked us to name the child. So, it's like a big honor, right?
Honor that they give.
It's a huge honor to be asked to name. And of course, from America, we don't, I don't know when the last time any of your friends came to you and asked you to name one of their kids, but I've never seen it happen here. So I'm like, my wife and I were like, oh my gosh, this is a big responsibility. So we go home and we're praying about this, and we find, I don't even remember the name we came up with, but we found a scripture and we typed it all up, and we were so excited to go back in and share this. And so we come in and we're like, hey, we have the name and here's the scripture. And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. We've already named him Mark after you. And I was just like, so anyway, it was like, just surreal, and I've got a story I'll tell you.
We can circumvent you. We just named him after you.
I was just like, okay, I don't know what to do with that, but it was an amazing honor to obviously have a child named.
And for that to
honor.
be your first rescue, what do you call them?
First
like rescue flights or first rescue flights?
Life flights, emergency life flights.
Oh my goodness. Oh, is little Mark still out there?
Yeah, and I've got another story toward the end I want to tell you.
Okay, yes. Oh, we'll wrap it up with little Mark. He's probably not little anymore, but
But anyway, just amazing moment, and just grateful to be able to pray with them and share Jesus, and just have a relationship with them over the years. It's one of those moments I'll never forget.
Wow. So talk to me about like the highs and the lows that come with now that you're in business, quote unquote, right? Like you have the plane, you're doing it. Talk about some of the like highs of it and then some of the harder parts of it for me.
Ministry is tough. Being in I feel blessed, and I always it's such an honor to save someone's life, and you get that rush, obviously, and and them saying thank you, and just to see it tangible. A lot of people don't get to actually see the benefit of the work they do,
right?
And so for me, that has just been amazing, and it never gets old. But on the flip side of that, not everybody lives. And so when you bring someone in like a baby that's really sick, struggling with malaria or tuberculosis or cerebral malaria was really the bad one, but and then they don't live, or a mother comes in with a breech birth and she passes away.
You've seen
and then
those things.
Now you're dealing with that, or if someone dies in the airplane. I can tell you one story.
Yeah, please tell me all the stories.
Sorry. But this is probably, I look back at probably the hardest day from a what we do standpoint.
Yeah.
I get a call. It was about 10 o'clock Sunday morning. This was last year. 2019. COVID's put me back a year. But and I get a call and they say, hey, we've got this lady, her Achilles has been cut by her husband. And, she's about 3 hours away from where you can pick her up. Can you get her in, so she can, as quickly as possible, obviously, so they can do surgery. And So this lady starts her journey down. About 5 minutes later, I get another phone call, and it's from another remote community. And they said, we have a 4-year-old child with a knife wound.
Oh.
And so, these people are living in the mountains. Apparently, this little girl, they all carry machetes and knives. I mean, it's just very common in that culture.
Yeah.
I spoke my wife and I were the keynote speakers at a second grade graduation on an island one time. And the gift was a machete and a coffee mug. So, in fact,
I mean, do we need more in life than that?
Well,
really?
Exactly. And in that context, that's all you need. When I go to the island, I just need a machete and a coffee mug. So it's
and your plane.
Exactly. So it's just normal, that's kids carry knives. You're always cutting wood. You're making your own firewood. There's no electricity out in any of these places. There's no roads. There's and there's no running water. So you're subsistence living there.
Yep.
So so apparently the mom, put the child to bed, didn't realize how bad it was. And then of course the child wasn't doing well. They brought her down to a clinic, hiked about 4 hours to get to a clinic where we could get to them. And then the nurse called me, and so I came out, and it was a place we'd only been once before. It was a lot smaller river, much smaller. I had to take off around a corner, land around a corner, trees, really tall trees. So I actually didn't bring a nurse in because I needed to be able to climb out over the trees. And with an airplane, it's all about weight and, distance and all of that. So I didn't bring a nurse, and I landed. Mom and dad are standing there holding this little 4-year-old girl. We get in the plane, and we start flying back. And I hadn't taken much fuel either, because I knew I needed to be light to get home, to get off the water fast and clear the trees. So I had enough, but I didn't have like a lot of extra. And I still remember I was flying about 2,000 feet. I'm 13 minutes from landing, and I start hearing the screams in the back of the airplane. And that's never a good thing, right? And especially in the PNG culture with death, and it's a lot of screaming and demonstrative wailing.
Mourning.
And so this dad, these people were so remote, they'd never been to town. They knew they didn't know anyone. They didn't have any way back. And he starts grabbing my shoulders. So I'm trying to fly the airplane. He's sitting right behind me, screaming. All of a sudden I'm getting shook, and he's yelling, you got to turn around. You got to turn around. And by that time I was too far towards home.
Yeah.
I had to land to get more fuel.
Oh man.
So, I'm trying to yell and talk to him and talk Pissin, which is the trade language that we speak over there, and explain to him that it's, we have to land, and I will take them back, but I can't do it right now because I don't have enough fuel. So anyway, we land at Wewak, and 4-year-old little girl. We unload them and the mom, and then so this baby's passed away. The parents are holding her. I have this other lady I have to go get as well. That should be arriving any moment. So I have to tell them, look, I will take you back, but I have to go get this other lady who's still alive that I need to get into the hospital as fast as I can. So I get back in the plane, fly down to a lake along the coast, and pick this another young lady up, bring her back, get her to the hospital, and then I've got the mom and dad and the little 4-year-old, and load them back in the plane. Long flight back to their village.
My goodness.
Landing back on the river there, and the boat comes to get them, and nobody there obviously knows what's happened. And now they see
she's passed away.
Passed away, and now everyone's yelling and screaming, and they unload. And just as I'm, obviously that's a very heavy memory. This woman comes running out of the crowd and says, "Hey, I have this other lady who's been hit in the head with an axe. Can you take her in?" And it was just, I loaded her in
Oh my
back to
goodness.
WeWack. And I remember just going home and just being just in shock, like I'd seen a lot by that point. I'd been there 9 years, but
Yeah.
I'd never had a day where it was just like so
One thing
heavy.
after the next. Yeah.
But through that all, it's like, yeah, there's things you don't understand, and we don't understand, why that all happened the way it did. But God has allowed us to be there to minister to those people in their time of hurting, and to love on them through their hurts, and to share the hope that we have for eternity, and the gospel message. And I think that's what God's called us to do. The rest of it we don't, we'll never understand completely. But it's hard, what we do. It's real. It's messy, but at the same point, just feel so blessed to be part of that, and to move on as far as hard things with family. Your kid gets sick, and our kids got sick a few times, and they're losing weight like crazy. The closest hospital, is Australia. That could really help. And you do deal with that with your own family, and with just malaria and all the other things that you deal with over there. It's part of the cost,
It is.
and we counted the cost before we went, and we have no regrets. My wife, honestly, I'd drop a patient off. She'd have 3 kids in tow, because we didn't have any other. The first 5 years, we had
you
no
didn't
other
have a staff. Right.
It was us,
It was your family. Yeah.
So
man.
She'd come down with the 3 little kids. I'd load a patient up with TB or whatever, reach birth, and she'd head off to the hospital, and I'd take off again to go pick up another patient. And she'd have to go into the hospital. A lot of times there was no beds for patients. They'd be laying on the floors, and she'd find beds for these ladies, and the kids are just, following along. And then I'd be calling her, checking the weather, like, hey, it's raining here. What's it look like?
Oh my god,
where you're at.
She's like she's your flight control too.
Yeah, so she's weather lady. She's
all
ambulance driver.
Oh my god.
And then she's hospital ministry.
And mom to these 3 kids. Oh my goodness, God bless her. Wow.
Yeah, she was a hero. And without her, it would never have worked, right? So God just brought me the right person, and she's been a rock for the last 20 years, and just amazing stories as a family, to be able to minister together. The kids, my daughter would then go in and work in the clinic as she got older. The boys would go in and help stack medicine at the medicine store. Very involved in the community. I coach soccer. We introduced surfing to several different islands, and part of the community. And so that's how our kids grew up over there. And I think they're blessed for the experiences that they've had. And
I have no doubt of
that. Still growing up, but it's been an amazing family journey. Really, one of the things we've supported a lot of other group organizations, kind of like you mentioned YWAM earlier.
Yep.
YWAM Medical Ship was there for 6 months. We supported them with bringing patients in, pouring patients out, bringing medical supplies in, flying personnel in when they would come in and go. The captain of the boat, for example, doctors, those type of things, and just supporting. And we've supported New Tribes or Ethnos 360 as a Bible translations. We've supported 11 different works, missionary families, and there Wycliffe, we've supported them. So there's probably 10 or 15 12 organizations that we've supported on a regular basis. So a big part of what we do is empower other organizations to do what God's called them to do. And it's an amazing ministry that God's allowed us to have, and we basically are focused on medicine delivery, emergency medical evacuations, disaster relief. So when there's flooding, sickness outbreaks, whooping cough is a big thing over there. Measles. We just helped get all the kids. They did 5 different inoculations with polio, because polio came back to Papua New Guinea.
Did it really?
A couple years ago. And so, going in and delivering polio vaccines and ice and flying teams in and out. We've spent many hours in the last couple of years doing that. So that's part of our disaster outreach. And then we also do discipleship training. We bring nurses in and do reoccurring training with them, as well as discipleship training with them, and have done some pastor discipleship training as well.
So much respect for you, who you moved your family there, and you're day in, day out. You're with the people, you're in the soccer clinics, you're surfing with them, your kids are raised with them, and you are, YWAM comes in, let us help you. A Bible literacy program comes in, let us help you. And I just have so much, because people can get so territorial too about their space.
Yeah, absolutely. And the amazing thing is, we found this
a lot. Yeah.
The amazing thing is we don't charge for any of our flights and never have.
Yep, I'm sure not.
That's the first. That's not normal. There's not another organization that I'm aware of that is able. And really, it's not like I'm beating my chest on that. It's just God's provided the funding, and the government has come alongside. And I've just been in this situation where it's like I can bless so many people, and it's absolutely amazing with no strings attached. Like YWAM didn't owe us anything, right? We probably, it was just amazing. Just like you're doing God's work. Let's help you. Oh, and when do you need to go?
How free?
I mean, it was unbelievable. I feel like, I feel like there's.
It's almost like a utopia.
Yeah, honestly,
or like a unicorn in any kind of ministry world. I feel like, honestly, which is so much honor and respect to you all for doing it that way. Give me some like crazy things you've seen. What are some wild stories that you have? Or was there ever a time? Okay, side note, bar for me. I'm not good at flying. I'm not like your wife. Commercial planes about give me anxiety attacks, right?
Gotcha.
So you talking about scaring your wife, I'm like, oh my goodness, I think I would have passed out from sheer anxiety. But I was just reading that story. Did you hear this story about the planes that collided this week? I think it was last night. You've got to go find it. You've got to go find it. It happened yesterday, because unfortunately I wake up and read the news and then I'm just full of anxiety for the rest of the day. Right. But this is a cool story though. They collided, I think, over Colorado, and they weren't commercial planes. Yeah. But half the plane was like, on one of them was completely taken off because they didn't have your widest flight controller, clearly. Letting them know what was happening on the ground. And they parachuted and lived.
Okay, so they must have been, there's a certain airplane that has a parachute, so they must have.
That's the one.
Okay.
Yep. They all lived. And people said, one of the guys was like, they should just go buy a lottery ticket because this does not happen. But are there any crazy like flight experiences you had? Or like, what are some of just the things that you've seen that you like growing up? Like when you got that call in Mexico sitting on the well that you never dreamed you would see?
One of the hardest things that we do is we dock the plane and undock the plane. So,
and docking means what?
Yeah, exactly. There's no dock. This isn't.
Oh, there is no dock. That's the point. Okay.
Yeah. So it's the loose
you running into trees. You running into the jungle, and then.
I have ran into reeds before on purpose to stop the plane.
Oh my goodness.
This is like on the side of the river. Okay. You've got twirling currents, logs and debris floating down. I've seen 50-foot long trees with 20-foot high roots floating down the river. And so, as you come up to the bank, that's always the hardest thing because there is no dock and the river rises and falls every time. It's different. And so sometimes.
And can it rise and fall within like hours or
in certain areas where it's tidal, but usually, when it starts coming up, it'll come up,
it's coming
6 inches an hour or something. Okay. It's not going like flash flood or anything, but so you're putting the planes, you have those wings sticking way out, and you've got to put them between two trees that are maybe 20 feet apart. So it's a trick to get them in. That's one of the most hardest things that we do is to get in and then stop the plane, talk to the villagers. They always help grab the plane. And then taking off again, how do you get back out of there? Oh. Someone, someone's out on the wing, turning the plane with the wing.
On the actual wing?
Well, holding the wing. So they're on the bank. I'm in the plane. They're standing there. So they reach up, grab the wing, and then they turn the plane because it's in the water, right?
So you don't have reverse on a plane?
No reverse.
Oh.
And And if you're not moving, obviously you're not turning. So you have to turn the plane in the right direction.
Right. Oh,
and then start the engine, right? And get out before the wind pulls you back into the trees or the current pulls you back into the trees. So I've been there as my first 2 years. I've flown, no incidences, nothing. And I'm like on my last flight before I come back to the States for my home assignment. And, I remember getting in the plane going, gosh, it's like, I don't want any problems. Like, I just need to finish this flight so I can say I've done it. We've been successful. We launched this. We've done this for two and a half years and we have no issues. So I get in, I load this patient, pregnancy late patient, nurses in.
You get a lot of pregnancies, it sounds like, huh?
Lots of, about 40% is pregnancies and babies.
Okay, wow.
So we get in and I load everybody in. I'm starting in, I'm talking to the people on the side of the bank, turn the plane. So they turn the plane. I start the engine and it coughs. So the engine just stalls. Well, it's like a boat. Imagine if you start moving and then it stops. And now all of a sudden I'm moving.
Now you're just floating.
But I'm floating in the tree and the current and the wind is blowing me into this tree. And I'm sitting there like, I kind of gave up. I'm like, there's nothing I can do, right? We're just going to bang into this tree and we'll figure out what to do after. So I kind of shut the engine off, turn the key off. Well, this guy, and I still honestly, I mean, it could have been an angel. Honestly, I have no idea. This guy comes flying out of the jungle and through the air, and he grabs the wing and he just pushes as hard as he can. And it was like a split second. So the plane turns back out toward the river, and I just turn the key back on, and the engine catches. And out
at the right
into
time.
the river. I mean, it was unbelievable. There's no reason I shouldn't have hit that tree, but it's. Yeah, those those are the things I never forget those. I've also been standing there while the plane floats down the river without me before, but that's all learning experiences.
You're on the bank?
I'm on the
bank.
And
the plane's taking off?
Well, the engine's off, but the current's pulling it down the river. And anyway,
because there's no docks.
Exactly, there's no docks. And so we've had a few experiences, but it's amazing. Honestly, we've been operating for 11 years now. I've done almost 1,200 flights myself, and zero incidences over there.
Wow.
God, and we were told, honestly, as we told people about this dream, there was other even organizations, aviation organizations in New Guinea that said, this can't be done. It's too dangerous. It's too much debris on the river. It rises and falls. All of those things I'm telling you. But we've gone 11 years with zero incidences or accidents. And I just go, wow, thank you, God. It's dangerous what we do. It is. But
it sounds very.
We've been able to accomplish the mission all these years. And just amazing.
So incredible. And even more dangerous for the people that don't have help if you weren't to risk it for them. Well,
that's just it. Yeah. We're the only organization right now that serves that whole river because we can land anywhere on it. It's just, we're serving that. We last year we served 119 villages along the river. So
it sounds like the people you have a really good relationship with. Yeah.
Yeah.
They know when you're coming and they know when you're coming and they know how to turn your plane around now for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Initially it's everybody's running at the plane, right? Because you land in a village, if you can visualize 100 people running at the plane, the props turning, and you're like, it's like having to educate them on what to touch,
don't
what
come
not
close.
to touch.
Yeah. That could kill you. Yeah.
Which is why you have to learn the language and culture, before we allow pilots to go out, because otherwise you could have some problems. So
that's a great rule of thumb.
Yeah. No,
learn the language, learn the culture before you do anything, y'all. Yeah.
That's right. I got called one Sunday afternoon. And how they get a hold of us is they have to put cell phone towers along the river. But, a lot of times they have to run 30 minutes, climb a tree to get cell phone reception, or climb a mountain to call. That's kind of a common thing. So this particular instance, this guy ran 30 minutes, climbed a tree, and called me, and he said, hey, we have a guy, that's here. He's got a wire in his stomach. And so I'm like, a wire in your stomach? I'm picturing a coat hanger, to be honest. I don't know what
for sure. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what you think.
A paper clip. A paper clip.
Someone says they have a wire in their stomach. So
right.
I load the nurse in, we head out, and we land on the river. Of course, it's chaos, canoes, people running up and down. And I see this guy, he's sitting away from me, and he's in this really small canoe, and he's got this rebarb that's sticking 4 foot out of him.
Oh, out of his stomach?
He's sitting there right through his stomach, through sideways. So if you can visualize, if you're facing forward, it's at right angle. So it just went right through him. And of course, everybody's screaming. He's like, and he's still totally alert, sitting up with this thing sticking out and talking and everything. And so I've got video footage actually of this. And so we get him over to the plane, and I'm going, what do I do? Like, I don't have I don't have cutters for rebar.
It's like number
rebar
4. Cutters. Like, is that like a thing? I don't know, but you don't have it either way.
Yeah, I don't have it. I don't want to touch it. Like, everyone's trying to grab this thing to help.
We've all seen enough medical TV shows to know you don't pull it out.
Yeah, don't pull it out. It had three barbs on it, actually.
Oh my gosh.
And don't pull on it. Don't do anything. So I get him in the plane, but I can't lay him down, obviously. This thing's 4 foot. So I have to turn him sideways. The rebarb is hitting the back of the airplane as he's sitting inside. His buddy is holding him. We always bring a watch, Papa, watch mama, we call him. But they're basically someone to take care of him at the hospital.
Okay, yeah.
Make sure they get fed and bathed and all of that. So we've got this guy sitting there sideways, load him in, fly him in. Same thing with our ambulance, sideways. He's sitting on this thing sideways. We get him in, and they literally push this thing through him. Like, they didn't pull it out. They pushed it through and sewed him up as they went.
What?
And the guy went home 2 weeks later. It's unbelievable.
Did you fly him home?
I actually didn't fly him home. He was fine. He went the long way.
You're kidding.
A lot of patients.
He took the days-long journey?
Yeah, a lot of the people go home. We can't afford to take patients home, so unless it's super serious.
Because you have to be there for the life-saving,
Exactly, and we would be flying all the time. So we will help them get home. We'll give them money to get to go the long route home. But that's one of their if it's a baby or that needs to get home, we do fly, and if it's really remote, we do. Yeah. But if there's a way for them to get home and they are discharged from the hospital and they're up for it, they go home by themselves. So anyway, that's the rebarb story. That's still one of the craziest stories, just because he lived.
Pushing it through, stitching him up as it goes, and walks home.
And I remember literally a year later, I picked up another patient from that village and brought him in, and and Willie was his name, and there he was. He came into the hospital and was pushing this guy around in a wheelchair. A year later, with a big smile on his face, it just, it was awesome to see him.
I was going to ask, like, do you go back to these? I mean, you do obviously go back over and over and over again. So do you get to know people there?
Yeah, absolutely. Every village, I know the people, and I was given a name by one village. I mean, there's different villages that kind of adopted our family. And, it's something that, it never gets old to go in.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another story.
Please do.
It'll kind of encapsulate for me what Samaritan's all about. But about 2019, we were bringing a new airplane in. So we have 2 seaplanes over there now. We actually have another one that's ready to go as well. So that'll be going over in the next year. But the ambassador from the U.S., I'd become friends with her just through some different speaking events that I'd done and met her at. And so we invited her to come out and be one of the speakers to launch this new airplane in the area. So she always wanted to go to the Sepik River. She was a little girl, so she had read stories about it. So she came out, and I took her out with the provincial administrator, my wife, and we flew out to Kambanimbit was the name of this village. And we landed along the side, and there was a huge, we call it Sing Sing over there, but they're all decked out in their grass skirts and playing the drums and all
Yeah.
painted up. And if you've seen any National Geographic, or if you can visualize,
beautiful
it's
ceremony.
beautiful ceremony.
Yep.
So they're welcoming us with this new airplane, and
Oh.
we get out, and there's probably 400 people that are there from this village, and they usher us over to sit on these 4 little chairs that they had, and it's in front of this aid post that we served there, which is basically a 10 by 20 a shack, that doesn't even have a bed in it. No medicine is in there at the moment. And they put us in front. So I'm sitting in front of the clinic. I'm looking out. I've got crowds on both sides and in front of me, and then the airplane's kind of behind them, just sitting along the side of the river. And so, like in New Guinea, that anytime you have a celebration like this, you have to make a speech. So, the leader gets up in the village, makes a speech. I make a speech. Then the ambassador makes a speech, and the administrator makes a speech, and then the medical worker stands up and she starts talking about the impact that Samaritan Aviation has had in this village, and going over statistics over all the years. We've been serving about 9 years at that point, and then she starts calling people out of the crowd, and the first person she calls out is Antonia and her husband, which is the first lady that I ever flew in.
Oh,
back to that story.
That first lady
that I told you earlier. The first lady. So she comes out with Mark, who's now 9 years old, and
your namesake,
my namesake, and their little daughter, and they come out and they say thank you, and so it's getting baskets and necklaces that they've made, and it's just saying thank you, and so it's a lot of hugs and an introduction to the ambassador and those sorts of things. And then they call another 5-year-old out of the crowd, and they said, you picked up this boy who had cerebral malaria, and he's alive today. And then they brought out another mom, and this lady had twins, and you saved her life. And then, they just kept coming. And for about 30 minutes, they just kept bringing people out of the crowd, and it was baskets, it was necklaces, it was thank yous. And, it was just overwhelming. For me to be sitting
I can't
there.
even imagine. There's your paycheck right there.
Well, that's it, right?
There it is.
And I'm sitting there looking at that airplane, and I just had this vision, while I was sitting there, of a father in a village in New Guinea whose wife is dying, been in labor for 3 days, or his child is dying from cerebral malaria or tuberculosis, and he's lost all hope. And he comes, and someone in the village says, "Have you called Samaritan Aviation?" And then to have this airplane, in America, I've gotten warning notes because our airplanes are so loud, because they're seaplanes, they have longer propellers. To say, hey, you've noise abatement, you've been too loud. And but in New Guinea, it's like the sound of that airplane is the sound of hope. And what it must be like for that person to hear that airplane come. This airplane comes out of the sky, lands, picks up his wife, his child, doesn't charge him anything, has no expectations of him, and then flies back and saves their life. And I see, in
my goodness,
in New Guinea, a gift is an obligation. If you give somebody a gift in New Guinea, someone else is writing it down.
Wow.
Because you're fully expected to repay that at some point in life.
Yeah.
And so the idea of grace is a very hard discussion to have, because a gift without obligation, what is that? Right. And so as you see, I see Samaritan as this picture of grace landing.
Yep.
Not because they deserve it, but because God loves them and has called us to serve. And just that picture of grace, it's such a powerful thing, I think, to be able to explain that to the patients in our house sick ministry. And I just thought, like, I was sitting and there are all these people around, and this idea of hope, and how Samaritan Aviation is hope in action.
Yep.
And I remember getting back in the plane after just those 2 hours, and talking to the ambassadors. We're flying back, and just talking about the power of hope. And it's the same in Papua New Guinea, in those remote communities. It's the same in America, in your community, in my community. And we all have hope for our kids. We have hope for our communities. We have hope for our churches, our families. And without hope, what do you have? And so to me, I just feel like, Samaritan Aviation
is true.
Offering hope and access. It's hope in action. And that's really what we strive to be, to share God's love through action. And that's why we're there.
And you've done it well. I have a feeling there are a whole lot more than just that one Mark running around. I bet there are a few Marks running around those villages to this day.
I think there's about 8 right now.
I was going to say, I would bet there's a lot of Marks. Mark's going to be the predominant name there in New Guinea. They come here soon because of your faithfulness and the faithfulness of your family. And wow, thank you for telling these stories, for giving us a glimpse into what life is like for a Samaritan Aviation pilot. Just hearing your stories, it just like reawakens this thing in me that just is always stirring, which is just like, if we're not serving the world and if we're not serving people, and I love what you said, like at no cost to them. And no cost to them. And God bless those people who supported you those 10 years before you had a plane. And their reward is sure. Oh my goodness.
And that's the thing I always tell people, I'm the lucky one. I get to go.
Yeah.
But we can't do it without partnerships.
That's right.
And so if you can't go, support somebody who is.
Yep. Buy a tank of gas for that plane. Yep. Absolutely.
Exactly. Also, it's follow we all have a call, we all have a community. And I'm always just like, guys, do something. You don't have to go to New Guinea.
That's
but
right.
There's needs all around us, and be part of something that's bigger than you. Change the world.